Welcome to Logic Basics. Today we're going to be talking about the principle of clarity. If you recall last time, we talked about common ground for public discourse. And part of the common ground included reason, the laws of thought, integrity, a commitment to what we claim to believe, presuppositional thinking, that we're going to address more basic questions prior to less basic questions. And then lastly, the principle of clarity, that some things are clear to reason. So today we want to talk about that. And I'm getting this argument from Dr. Gangadean's book, The Philosophical Foundation, A Critical Analysis of Basic Belief. And here are the opening lines of that book. Gangadean claims, some things are clear, the basic things are clear, the basic things about God and man and good and evil are clear to reason. So we'll have to ask, what does that mean? Remember, we're also using our tools of reason in its use, and today we're going to be using those tools to ask, what does that mean? Remember, meaning is more basic, is logically prior to truth. And we're going to be asking whether some statements, judgments are true. All right, so here's the argument that some things are clear. We'll start there. We'll start small. Here's the argument. Some things are clear. Okay, that's a judgment. And we might want to say, what does that mean, clear? Clear meaning what? Clear means it can't be denied without losing meaning. That the mind grasps it. It's easily understood. It cannot be denied, and when you do deny it, you lose meaning. Okay, so to say that some things are clear, we have to consider the opposite, the contradiction. None is clear. And we'll ask, what does that mean to say none is clear? Now, I've drawn a box here. We're going to call this, you're going to learn about this very soon, the square of opposition. And the square of opposition is a tool for looking at the truth claims of judgments. Each corner represents a different iteration of the judgment, and they are, the diagonals represent contradictions. So here I have some is clear is our claim, and it's contradicted by nothing is clear. So these because they're contradictions, cannot both be true and cannot both be false. That's why I put A here and non-A over here. Can't be both A and non-A, and we know that by the law of non-contradiction. All right, so judgments are either true or false, and we want to know, is this judgment, some things are clear, true? For it to be true, we have to rule out the contradiction and show that that is not true, or that is impossible, or leads to meaningless. It violates a law of thought. So let's go back up here to the argument and look to see if we can rule out nothing is clear. Just want to get that. All right. Here, let's look at this statement. The statement, some things are clear, assumes reason. It doesn't prove it. This statement is also an example of what we mean by clear. So this contradiction is going to be an example of something that is clear. It is clear to reason that contradictions cannot both be true and cannot both be false in the same respect and at the same time. So that is what the laws of thought tell us. So that is something that is clear to reason. All right, so let's look at the argument here. Now notice, to say some things are clear, we looked at what does that mean. At least one thing is clear to reason, is undeniable to reason. Okay, at least one thing. Some means at least one. So we looked at what does it mean. Now we want to know, is it true? Remember, truth requires an argument or evidence. So let's look at the argument that some things are clear. So point one says the contradiction of some is clear is none is clear, or nothing is clear. Okay, let's consider that possibility. Nothing is clear. Here's an implication. If none is clear, if nothing is clear, then no distinctions are clear. If none is clear, then there is no distinction between A and non-A, between being and non-being, between truth and falsehood, between good and evil. We cannot make those distinctions if nothing is clear, because those are clear distinctions, right? They're contradictions, they're opposites. Clearly, they aren't the same thing. If no distinction is clear, then there is no meaning. Everything is everything if there's no distinction. If there is no meaning, then there is no thinking. And if there is no thinking, then there is no talking. Why? Because thoughts are concepts, and concepts are expressed by words or communication, which we've already learned. And if there is no thinking and talking, then there is nihilism or nihilism. Nihilism is meaninglessness. Nothing is meaningful. If there is no concern for consistency, there is no possibility of dialogue, and the discussion ends, which is why the principle of clarity is part of our common ground. Now notice, if there is no thinking and talking, then there's nihilism. Remember we talked about the loss of significant speech? The loss of significant speech is meaninglessness, which is the same as nihilism. And if there's no concern for consistency, then there's no integrity, which is something else we talked about. So there's no possibility of dialogue and the discussion ends. But guess what? Nihilism is not existentially possible. What that means is it's not livable. So a person can profess to be a skeptic. A person can profess that there is no thing that's clear, nothing is clear, but they can't live that way. We cannot consistently live without thinking and talking. So think about that. Have you ever tried to not have a thought? I bet you're thinking about not having a thought right now. We can't not think and we can't not talk. So either we stop talking and thinking, or we're inconsistent and we're hypocrites, which means we lack integrity. So because we can't stop thinking and talking, we have to affirm that some things are clear. All right, so let's go back to our square of opposition here. If some things are clear is true, then the opposite is false. So here we just use the square to show that this position is true because the opposite is impossible. This is called a reductio ad absurdum argument. We'll learn more about reductio ad absurdum. Maybe Google that, reductio. Here, I'll type it here for you to look up. Reductio ad absurdum. Google that. Look, I messed up my picture now. All right, so here's the argument that some things are clear and the basic things are clear is the next claim in Gangadean's text. So let's talk about that. The basic things are clear. Remember, we drew the house and we talked about the basic things in our foundation. The basic things were about what is eternal, what is a human, what is good, what is evil. So the basic things are clear is what the next claim is. Now we will be testing that. Is it true that the basic things about what is eternal are clear? This is where we're going to give a series of arguments to test it. Is it clear that either God exists or God does not exist? Seems like either A or non-A. So that does seem to be clear. Either it's clear that God exists or God does not exist. If we can answer that question about the existence of God, then we can answer what a human being is. If God exists, then human nature is X. If God does not exist, then human nature is Y. And if we can figure out what human nature is, then we can figure out what is good for a human and what is not good for a human. So we can figure out what is good and what is evil. So that's the next claim in his book. So let's think about that. Can we know what is clear about ultimate reality, human nature, and ethics, right? So that's one of the goals of this class is trying to figure out if we could know those things. Now, there is one roadblock that we need to encounter next, and that is skepticism. Skepticism is the position that says nobody can really know for sure. Another roadblock is going to be called fideism, and it says nobody can really know for sure, you just got to believe anyway. So before we can get to knowing things, we have to overcome these roadblocks, and that's what we're going to try to do next.